If you would, please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's remain standing and acknowledge anyone in our Rotary family or abroad that we should keep in our thoughts. Anyone in particular? Not seeing any hands. Definitely want to keep all the folks affected still by the Maui and Hawaii wildfires, and then all the flooding that's happening out in California and that part of the United States. So definitely want to keep them in our thoughts. So let's give them a few seconds. Okay, thank you. Please be seated. All right. Well, we will start by welcoming guests today, and we have two of them. Glenn Ripke has a very important guest here today.
Good afternoon. My important guest is Past District Governor Steve Whittaky. He's here to help the global grants people talk about the strategy in fundraising. So, welcome, Steve.
And Linda, right here, has a guest.
Hi, my guest today is Callista Sievers, and she is the Executive Director at Green Hills Community.
Thank you, guests, and for sitting so close together. Made that very easy. Go ahead, take it away, John.
All right, it's great to have guests. We'll be singing our welcome song, and it's to the tune of the Notre Dame Victory March, so please join along. Welcome to you from Maine's Rotary, Naveda, London, or Gay Paris, from far off lands or the USA. We're glad that you are here today. Come back again whenever you're near. Join us and then we'll make it clear. Around the world you'll always be welcome at Rotary. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We got an exciting opportunity to welcome a new member of Rotary to our club today. And so could I have Sandy Swanson and Anna McCracken please come on up front? Do you want the mic? Sure, go ahead.
And I'm going to correct my name. It's Anna.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So anyway, Sandy Swanson joined Overflow Thrift Store in October 22 as managing director. In that role, she is responsible for all store operations and ministry partnerships. Prior to joining Overflow, Sandy served over 25 years in healthcare in St. Louis, Missouri, and in Des Moines. In a variety of roles of health systems, Sandy had experience in strategic planning, business mergers, marketing and public relations, and facility planning, development, and construction. Cindy has a Bachelor of Business Administration degree from Iowa State University and a Master's of Health Administration degree from St. Louis University. She's married to David, and they have 3 children, and she's really proud of her 1 grandchild. She and her family are avid cyclo fans and enjoy family vacations and involve hiking and relaxing on a lake. Welcome to Sandy.
Kent up here. You can go ahead and take it. You can take it. Thank you, Anna. Sandy, you stay. You stay. And I'm going to invite past President Kent Frankenfeld up to the stage to give our charge.
Oh, is this a paid endorsement?
It is not.
Oh, it is not. Sandy, it is an incredible pleasure to welcome you. By the way, Sandy's husband also graduated from Iowa State, as well as 4 siblings who married all siblings that have gone to Iowa State. So there's 8 of them all involved with Iowa State. So another insight. Sandy, Rotary, you're one of 1.4 million people that are members of Rotary International. There are over 200 clubs, or state countries involved with Rotary. There are over 46,000 clubs involved with Rotary. If you've noticed anything, you're nothing but a number.
I'm used to that.
Yeah. However, before you, we have doctors, lawyers, bankers, professionals. We have individuals that are in education, that run service organizations. But one thing every one of these individuals have in common is what you now have in common. We are all Rotarians. And with that, we're challenged to do our best with service above self. So with those words, I encourage you to be involved, to participate, and we look forward to seeing you here every other Monday and online as you can.
Great.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Ames Rotary Club.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. Always a great day to introduce a new member to the club. So, all right, on to the business. So, fall season for Ames Miracle League begins Saturday, and if there's not signed-up sheets on your table, there may be some out floating around out there. But please get in touch with Karen or the table over there on the side of the near the entrance exit. So please sign up. I think it's a pretty easy gig and a lot of fun. And so go out there and volunteer your time. And we're going to get the brag bucket going here. So do I have Kent? You want to come back up, grab a mic? I'll get us started again. So my oldest just turned 14 on Saturday. He went and successfully got his driver's permit this morning. And so definitely want to put in some money for that. And please keep my wife and I in your thoughts and prayers as we embark on this exciting and terrifying adventure of teaching our oldest how to drive a vehicle. So with that, we'll get us started. I don't think
There we go. So just a word, if you would, when you stand up, because you're paying for this privilege, would you share your name and your line of work or business? That way, another way for us to get the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. So with that, let's start with those that would like to contribute some to our foundation and to share with the club. Who do I have? I'm not an auctioneer. Okay, that was good.
Oh, right there, Kent.
What? Here? Thank you.
No problem. Somebody's got to start it off, right? So my brag is kind of.
Who are you?
I'm Beth Luke with Friendship Art, and that's who I'm going to brag about kind of first. I have a twofold, so I'm going to sneak one in here. We have our open house tomorrow for a ribbon cutting for our brand new office space, and it was pretty exciting because we'd been at our last one for over 20 years. So if you're looking for something to do tomorrow, stop by 5820 Lincoln Way and you can see our new space. And then my brag about my family is we kind of got to check something off our bucket list yesterday, and we got to join a flash mob for my dear friend Sandy, who is going through a terminal cancer. And they organized a flash mob, and I was really proud of my family because they were like, oh, I can't dance, I can't do this. And I'm like, this isn't about us, this is about her. And it kind of reminded me when you were saying about the Rotarians' service above self, and it wasn't about us, it was about doing something for somebody else.
Excellent, thank you. Carl?
Good afternoon. I'm Carl Byrne, and I'm unemployed, but I used to be on the faculty at Iowa State University. My grandson, Charlie Byrne, is starting at defensive end on the East Ridge High School football team this fall, and furthermore, he has offers from North Dakota State and the University of St. Thomas for when he graduates.
Thank you. Well, Lynn.
Thank you. I'm also unemployed, but my husband would say that I worked really hard for no money. So I think a lot of retirees do that. Oh, Lynn Carey, sorry. I know who I am. So I have two today. One is in my role as president of KHOI Community Radio Board. I just want to say thank you to everyone here. I don't know if you all know that the Rotary Board voted a while ago to allow KHOI to broadcast the programs that are done here. And so we've been doing that for several months, typically on Wednesdays, and we cut out this kind of stuff, but air the meat of the program and thank Rotary Club of Ames profusely for providing that content. And it does then spread the word much farther of what Rotary is bringing in terms of programs. So I hope it's good in both directions. And then my second thing is a repeat of last time. I still have one fun koozie left. And in case you forget what it is, it's to raise money for shelter boxes. And it was developed for RAGBRAI and other bike rides where they're promoting it. So it's the 4-way beer test. Is it ice cold? Is there enough for all concerned? Will it build good times and much better friendships? Can it get any better than this? So I have one more. If you'd like to make a donation to Shelterbox, you can own this koozie. If you don't want another koozie, you can still make a donation to Shelterbox. Maybe I should do it that way. If you don't want a koozie, then make a donation to Shelterbox.
There you are. Thank you, Lynn. Just a minute, Tammy. Okay. Oh, just a minute, Chris. I have another one here as well.
Go ahead.
We'll let you go.
There you go. Chris Nelson with Nelson Electric, and both things actually have to do with that. The first is that this is our 115th anniversary this year of being in business. And so it was founded by my great-grandfather. The other part that comes with that is that a month ago, my brother and I bought my dad out. So he's no longer an owner, he's still an employee, and I like to tell people an employee with a completely different handbook than everybody else. And so I've moved up to president, and my brother has moved up to vice president of the company effective last month. So exciting times.
So I'm Anna McCracken, and I founded the Ames Writers Collective in 2021. Last year, the Rotary funded one of our kids' programs. But a year ago, I had launched a cancer writing program for the Bliss Cancer Center, which I was doing for free. And I'm happy to report that I'm starting to branch out, and John Stoddard Cancer Center is going to pay the Ames Writers Collective to run cancer writing programs for their cancer patients.
That's incredible news. Thank you.
Glenn Ripke, also retired from Iowa State University. I just wanted to say thank you to whomever it was that got the message from the Rotarians in the Cedar Rapids area that they needed a place to stay during RAGBRAI. They stayed at our house. We had 14 of them overnight, and it was an incredibly warm night. All but four chose to sleep inside that night. We had one sleeping in a hammock in a tree. One guy said he snored too much and he had to sleep in a tent outside. And the other two had a camper, so they were just set no matter what. And out of that, I've got so far have one contact for fundraising for our next water project. We had Rotarians from Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, Florida, and California. So it was quite a diverse group. Anyway, thank you for whoever made all those contacts.
I'm Tammy Goldbeck at Stevens Auditorium, and my brag bucket today is all about events. We announced Winona Judd this morning at 9 a.m. Goes on sale on Friday, and she's coming on October 27th. And last Monday, we announced RuPaul's Drag Race Night of the Living Dead on Friday, October 13th, which will be a very fun night. And then tomorrow night we have our Goldfinch Room, which is our singer-songwriter showcase, and we have moved it inside. But Sandwich Shop will still be our food truck. So that's at 6:30 tomorrow night.
Thank you, Tammy.
Money first? Always. Steve Winnicky.
From past governor.
Yes. Steve Winnicky from the Ankeny Club of Rotary. Retired from actually 3 different jobs. I know I don't look that old, but I have. My brag is that I convinced my wife of 3 years that we've both been empty nesters in our families for 14 years, and we now have a 16-year-old Rotary exchange student living with us. We picked her up on Wednesday night, and I'm not sure what we got ourselves into. My wife has never had a daughter before. We couldn't have picked a more perfect girl from Madrid, Spain, and she's going to run our wheels off. She is a very active girl, and she just got here Wednesday night. She plays in her first JV volleyball game tonight. So I'm not sure she knows what she's gotten herself into. My other brag besides that is that if your Rotary Club has not been fully engaged in RILA, Interact, and Youth Exchange, please do so. It's extremely enriching, and you would get so much out of it if you participate in it now or expand what you're doing in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And I have one comment. I don't know if we have anyone else. I would like the 2 individuals from Green Hills to stand up just for a moment. I'll put $5 in for this. I want you to notice the uniform. I like it. The black and white is awesome. You two would make a perfect picture together. So thank you, and I appreciate the guests being brought, Linda. So just wanted to bring out that I like this fashion awareness. So be on the outlook for future brag buckets if that should occur, because you will be chosen. Anyone else want to share quickly? Or longingly? All righty.
Okay. All right.
Mason, it's all yours.
Thank you. And thank you all for sharing. Really appreciate that. All right. I would like to bring Kristen Pates up to the microphone here. She's got some updates from United Way of Story County. Go ahead, Kristen.
Thanks very much, Mason. We are delighted to give just a brief update on United Way today before our program, so thank you for this time. As you know, United Way has been at the cutting edge of meeting needs for more than 7 decades. With the spirit of community service in this club, so many of you have been and continue to be instrumental in helping us change lives here locally. Over the past 7 decades, we've made great strides in improving community health, enhancing education for our youth, and strengthening financial stability. However, our mission is far from over. You've heard me present our 2025 community impact goals at past meetings. So although progress towards these goals certainly hasn't been linear, given the time between the launch of these goals in the spring of 2020 and now, we are making great strides. And we are excited to announce that we have met our health goal 2 years ahead of schedule. So with that said, I just wanted to give you just a glimpse about 3 programs that are either happening right now, or just wrapping up, or extremely relevant. So first, in health, we've been expanding our reach to offer vital resources to those who need them most. This includes mental health awareness programming, dental care, and things like nutrition. The photo that you see on the screen now is of a recent grant to primary health care, where primary health care could then buy CSA shares from Mustard Seed Farms, a local grower here in Story County, and then have that produce available in their waiting room for families who are visiting primary health. This is a way that we can use nutrition to better health benefit or outcomes and use that nutrition as medicine, really. In education, we continue to provide necessary educational materials like books in the homes for young learners, tutoring and mentorship programs that can really change the trajectory of a student's life. The program that's on the screen here is one of our recently wrapped summer learning funded programs through United Way of Story County. We funded summer learning programs at 8 agencies here locally, and that impacted more than 1,800 youth in our communities. And then finally, in financial stability, we provide transportation for work, financial literacy programs, emergency assistance for those who are having trouble making ends meet. One brand new program that we were able to bring as an expansion to our communities this year was when we were contacted by Ivy College of Business to offer a second site for their VITA, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance program, for our communities. Previously, they were taking appointments only at the university. We were able to go into partnership with them and the Ames Public Library, where we were serving additional clients, and through that effort brought more than $139,000 of credits for earned income tax, education, and others here to our community. So a huge effort that really did make a difference here locally and extend that long-term financial stability for our working families. This program has an income cap of $60,000, but the average income for the people participating was around $27,000 this year. So together, we know that we can make a difference. We invite you to participate in the annual campaign and Day of Caring. We're kicking off on September 15th, so just a few weeks away. Our campaign chairs for the next few years are on the screen. We'll have Kevin Brooks as our campaign chair this year, Heather Botine next, and Chuck Winkleblack the year after that. And of course, although Jean Cressy has announced her 2024 retirement, she continues to be at the helm of our organization. And I have her contact information on the screen there. You can always reach out to any of my colleagues or myself too. We really appreciate the partnership from the club and businesses represented in the club, and appreciate the opportunity to share this message with you today.
Thank you, Kristen. Really appreciate what United Way does in Ames and Story County. You're at the tip of the spear when it comes to getting involved and helping out all of our populations and demographics. So really appreciate what you all do. So thank you. And now I will invite President-elect Katie McMahon to the microphone to introduce our guest speaker for the day.
Thanks, Mason. Rob Sand is here with us today. He was born and raised in Decorah, Iowa, before becoming Iowa's chief public corruption prosecutor from 2010 to 2017, where he uncovered the largest lottery rigging scheme in American history. First elected state auditor in 2018, he uncovered a record amount of misspent money in his first term and started a government efficiency program so effective that it has been copied by this Mississippi state auditor. So please join me in welcoming State Auditor Rob Sand.
Good morning, everybody. Or good afternoon. Yeah. You just audited the auditor, didn't you? Nice to see you all here. We got a good group. I'm accustomed to having spent 7 years as a prosecutor kind of wandering around in the well with a jury. So I feel weird when I'm behind a podium. And I'm going to walk around a little bit if you don't mind. Happy to be here today. I like taking questions from people. You are all my bosses. You don't get to quite give me the same level of direction as if someone who is actually working underneath you in your office, because I have about 3 million other bosses. But I always see this sort of thing as an opportunity for people to put the pins to me, poke me with a stick, see what comes out. And I'm happy to be doing that. So if at any point here you have a question, something you want to talk about, raise your hand. If I can't see your hand, just yell at me. I'm used to getting yelled at. I've got a wife and 2 sons at home, so that won't surprise me either. A couple things I'll emphasize for you. One is our PI program. That's the efficiency program that Katie mentioned. I'm really proud of this. So I'm gonna toot the horn on the PI program for a minute. If there was one thing that got me in 2018 to run for state auditor, it was the idea that the auditor's office had the ability to promote efficiency in government, but wasn't really doing it. Here and there, yes, but there was no one consistent effort that they would make to help improve efficiency in government. That to me, I'm a bit of a good government nerd. That was exciting. I thought, wow, so I could run for state auditor, and all I have to do is say, we're going to start promoting government efficiency. We're going to start a program. I don't have to get permission from anybody. Okay, well, let's do that. I had spent 7 years as Assistant Attorney General, and criminal prosecuting, by the way, it's not fun work. As a cop, you can do a lot of good things for people. You can help somebody in an emergency, help somebody in a car accident, get a cat down out of a tree. By the time it comes to the prosecutor, we are only thinking about the worst things that human beings do to each other. And that was weighing on me. I always described myself as a happy and an optimistic person. But there came a point, probably 6 years into my work at the AG's office, where I said that, and it came out like this: I'm a happy, optimistic person. And I noticed that because it felt different, and I didn't like the way it felt. So I got into politics. I'd worked with the auditor's office, right? They conduct Iowa's public corruption investigations. Those would then land on my desk for prosecution. I liked the people that I worked with. I saw a lot of the work they did. I thought highly of it, but also thought there were a couple things that from my perspective in the courtroom could get tweaked. And it was reading through chapter 11 and seeing that they had this really broad mandate to improve efficiency that made me run. That was it. And so we created this program called PI, Public Innovations and Efficiencies. The heart of it is what's called the pie chart. It's about a 9-page checklist, basic things you can do to save money. You can probably do them at your nonprofit. You can do a bunch of them in your home, but they are definitely good for the public sector, every single one of them. We then ask cities, counties, and school districts to fill that out, send it back into us, and then we make available to the public which steps they have in place, which practices they have in place. That also means that they're entered into our pie contest. So we have an annual pie contest where we divide the cities and counties into fifths, size-wise, and then we look at school districts, their classification for sports. We use the football, just 'cause. And we give awards for the best performing in each category. So for those, I come around the state and I bring a certificate out to a city council meeting and an actual pie that we can eat. It doesn't last as long as their certificate, so we have to eat it pretty quickly. But the certificate they can put on the wall, and then everybody in town can see that they're doing a good job of saving taxpayer dollars. And I think that's just a good thing to do. The other thing that we do as a part of the program is collect good ideas that save money, right? Nobody has a monopoly on good ideas. Not a political party, not a person with a particular educational degree. You could be the streets department manager and have never finished high school, but you'd be full of good and innovative ideas that save money. If you've got those, we want to hear about them. We add them to the pie chart that we send out every year so that other government entities can copy them. We call those pie recipes. So all kinds of terrible puns for the program. But as Katie mentioned, it's already been copied by the state of Mississippi. I just heard recently that Maryland is going to be copying it, and we know that Oregon, Washington, and Tennessee are considering it as well. So it has been a hit. And people don't necessarily hear a lot about what's going on in the state auditor's office, but that's one of the fun things. Background on me and a little bit on how I run the office. Some people in my party don't like this when I say it, but it's true. I don't like political parties. I think it would be better off without any of them. That's what all of the founders warned us about, right? George Washington's farewell address. 2 things. He sort of tapped the microphone and said, I gotta go. 2 things, foreign influence and partisanship. John Adams' quote is my favorite. The greatest evil possible in this country will be 2 great parties united only in their hatred of each other. Bingo. Welcome to 2023. The number of people who, and I don't know, I can't say whether it's something that people get involved to do this or they just end up there, but the amount of effort that gets put into fighting the other side in politics, if it was put into actually solving problems, our lives would be substantially better for it. So I make a point of defending Republicans even when I don't have to. I make a point of criticizing Democrats even when I don't have to. I have criticized Hunter Biden. I have defended Kim Reynolds, just on social media as myself. Within the office, the first 2 people that I appointed to the most senior positions in the office were people who had made campaign contributions to my opponent in 2018. I don't care. I might care a little bit. I'm competitive. But what do we do when our competitive nature butts up against our obligation for public service? Honest question. What do we do? What kind of decision do we make? Because those decisions are the kind of things that send a statement to everybody else in the state. And I'm really proud to have done that. I think that's the right way to do it, because I don't want this office, I happen to have a D behind my name, I don't want it to be something that people think represents the Democratic Party. I want people, no matter what their political affiliation is, to know it represents them, and that there are people with their political views who are working in the highest levels of the office. The only people, in fact, that have held the deputy positions in our office have been Republicans and independents since I've been there. I don't want to do it any other way. I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. I think that's what we're called to do under the Constitution. Personally, as a person of faith, I think it's what I'm called to do in a matter of my faith. We're supposed to be serving each other. We're supposed to be working together. We're supposed to be solving problems, not having fights. What else do I want to hit you with? Does anybody have any questions right off the bat? Yes. Oh.
The lottery was a big issue early in your service. What's up with the lottery now? There's some really big numbers being given out. And what's new with lottery control? I guess, for lack of better words. I know it's not legal, but
sure.
Take it from there.
Sure. Good question. My involvement in the lottery now would probably be mostly limited to my winning it, and I would be okay with that. There are some very big numbers getting thrown around lately. For those of you who may have missed it or forgotten about it, Katie mentioned it with the introduction, but I was at the Attorney General's office and got handed this case with this strange story about the guy who, somebody, won a $16 million lottery ticket, but then turned it in on the very last day of the one-year claim period, and then walked away from $16 million because the Iowa lottery thought enough was suspicious that they wanted to know who had purchased and possessed the ticket prior to the person turning it in. The person turning it in said, "This is a bearer instrument, you just need to pay me or I'm going to sue you." The Iowa lottery said, "Bring it on." And they walked away from $16 million. Crazy. My boss had the case for a while. When he retired, he handed it to me because I was the youngest person in the office. And I said, "Thank you, sir, may I have another?" It turned out that the guy who had bought the ticket was Eddie Tipton. He worked at the Multi-State Lottery Association. And he never gave us much of an opportunity to investigate. He demanded speedy trial. You have a right to that within 90 days in the state of Iowa. And so we went to trial on it, kind of on a wing and a prayer, alleging that he had rigged it, because in fact his job was writing the computer program that the computer uses to pull random numbers. What a coincidence. Just a series of very interesting coincidences that the jury agreed with me was enough to conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that he had rigged it. After that, with some of the coverage that came from it, we got a tip from Texas. A guy who said, "Did you all know Eddie Tipton's brother had won the lottery maybe about 10 years back somewhere out west?" We said, "No, but we're not surprised." Thank you. We were able to use that tip to then uncover what is the largest lottery rigging scheme in American history. Terry Rich, he was the CEO of the lottery at the time, good guy. I worked very closely with him. He was very supportive of the investigation. He could tell you a lot more about what's going on with the industry as a whole these days. I'll tell you, there was a lot of pressure to just put the whole thing to bed. He can speak more directly to some of that. I had some of it come my way, a lot of it went his way. But a lot of people in the lottery industry didn't want whatever the truth was to be known because they thought, well, that could only be bad for us. I like the 4-part test myself. I go to DM-AM in Des Moines. I am a Rotary member. It's the truth. We should want to know it because it's the truth. And we don't need any other reason to know it other than it's the truth. And Terry really did a good job of pushing back on that at the time. I think the big numbers really are a function of a change in the way some of the games are run, just to make it a little bit more rare that jackpots are hit. Because what they've discovered is when the number gets, in over 1 billion, holy cow, the tickets really fly off the shelves. And so they've made them just a little bit harder to win to hopefully stoke those bigger jackpots to then get those bigger numbers. Long answer to a short question. I saw another hand up out here, I thought. Yes, sir.
Well, I think we can start with the belief, I think, that public tax money ought to go for public purposes, and there should always be good accountability. So the question I'm going to raise, if you can have some examples of where we need to do that. And maybe the second one is, what do you think about the school choice situation?
Sure. I think well, I'm gonna start with two really obvious ways to make sure that tax dollars are responsibly used. Is it fair for me to say that's the heart of your question? Number one, people who steal a bunch of money from taxpayers should go to prison. Period. I'm not saying we should lock up the key. I'm not saying we should lock them up and throw away the key. You could lock up the key as long as you keep the lock to the key that the lock of the key is in. But when I was in the Attorney General's office, everyone in my division, area prosecutions, at one point or another had prosecuted someone who stole tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars from taxpayers and never served a day. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not a deterrent, that is an invitation. You can almost hear, it sounds like a Joe Clemens radio ad, right? Really fast talking. Do you have poor credit? Do you hate applying for loans? Hey, just get a job where you can access taxpayer money and steal all you want. If you get caught, the amount that you get caught for, you'll probably have to pay it back, but it'll be real slow, and you won't have to go to prison. Right? We can't deter people from this kind of conduct if we're not taking it seriously. I've been asking the legislature to pass a statute that would do that for the last 4 years. They haven't quite gotten around to it yet. I don't understand this. I really don't. Right? Two college kids down in campus town get in a fight or get angry with each other, right? And they're drunk. Neither of them is going to say to the other, hey, buddy, hold on a second now. The last two guys who got in a fight down here, they had to go to jail. So maybe we shouldn't do this, right? No, because they're drunk and they're angry. They're going to have a fight. The entire point here is that we can deter people's misconduct on financial crimes because they are very sober crimes. They are not crimes of inebriation. They're not crimes of passion, right? These are people sitting in a room looking at the money they have access to and noticing that maybe no one else is looking. If we make it clear that that kind of thing results in a prison sentence, fewer people will steal money from taxpayers, period. So that's my number one answer. Here's my number two answer, and this goes back to the law that was passed this year. Did anybody not hear about the new law that requires state agencies to hide documents from the auditor's office? Everybody heard about that? This is bonkers. Bonkers. No other place in the country does it. We had a bipartisan, nationwide pushback. The American Institute of CPAs. Do we have any accountants or CPAs? All right. Well, thanks for what you do. The American Institute of CPAs almost never comments on pending legislation because part of what the profession does is try to reserve judgment or advocacy so that they can maintain independence to judge something after the fact. They did not feel the need to do this in this situation because the statute was so dangerous, right? So they wrote a letter to the legislature saying, this is a terrible idea, you should not pass this bill. Dave Walker is a guy who got his first presidential appointment from Ronald Reagan, then was Comptroller General for the United States of America for most of George W. Bush's presidency, was nominated by the Republican Party to be governor of his state in 2018. He wrote the legislature 2 letters, one for the House version of the bill and the other for the Senate version of the bill, both saying, this is a bad idea. First time it said, this is a bad idea, you shouldn't do it. Second time he said, I read how you changed it, you didn't make it any better of an idea, you still shouldn't do it. And the fact that I'm going to be really plain here, this law passed because we uncovered a record amount of misspent money in my first term. And the reaction by a small number of people in state government was, that's terrible. We've got to stop him. as opposed to that's terrible, we should quit misspending money, which we would hope would be the answer. I can't tell you that that was the governor's idea. Clearly someone in her office had that mindset. I can tell you that certainly there were people who voted for it it was easier to get them to go along because of partisanship, right? Not because they didn't do it necessarily because I was a Democrat, but the folks who didn't like the level of assertiveness that I brought to the state auditor's office, it was easier for them to get hesitant members of their party to go along by pointing out the partisan difference. That law is crazy. It is a list of documents that we are now no longer supposed to look at unless it is absolutely mandatory to look at it for an audit. The folks who are sitting out here who raise their hands, they can tell you it'd be hard to define what's absolutely mandatory for an audit to look at. Because the whole nature of it is you look over here, you look over there, and you don't really have a written agreement of what you're going to look. Because what's a written agreement of where you're going to look? A written agreement of where not to steal money from, right? Steal it over there. And so now in state law in Iowa, we have a written list of places where people with access to public funds should steal money. It's going to be a lot easier to get away with it if you do it over here because the state auditor's office is going to have a really hard time looking at it. It's as crazy as it sounds. I wish I had anything positive to say about this statute. I don't. Is there a workaround? That is a good question. We're going to figure it out. We're going to be looking for one. And our approach is really going to be, we're going to ask for everything we think we should ask for. And if there's stuff that they refuse to give us, number one, that's on their conscience, not ours. And number two, we'll kind of cross those bridges when we come to them. So to answer your question, I'd pass the bill that says mandatory prison time, and I'd unpass the bill that makes it harder for the auditor to do their job in deterring waste of tax money. You also had a second piece of this on the school choice issue, and I'll answer that too. You can think that school choice is a great idea and still think that the bill that the Iowa legislature and the governor passed is a disaster waiting to happen. And let me be clear about what I mean by that. Set the politics aside, whether or not you think it's a good idea. Just look at the bill itself. When you enter the program, your $7,500 for your child's education has to go first to tuition at the private school that you're going to, okay? So if it's $10K, the whole thing is going there. If tuition is $5K is going there, and you got $2,500 you can use for other qualified expenses. If that other $2,500 you have left over you misspend, you can get kicked out of the program as a parent. You can get charged with the crime as a parent. All that money that we're requiring to go into private schools, on God's green earth, there is a single thing that a private school cannot do with your tax dollars. They can't give a rebate to parents. That's it. That's it. And again, like, when I realized this, I actually went to the people who were advocating the bill thinking that I had discovered an oversight. I'm so naive. I saw this and I thought, oh, they can't possibly want that to be the outcome, right? Because under this law, a for-profit private school can take every one of your tax dollars and put it in their pocket for profit. This law does not require schools to put this money into educating children. I'm not exaggerating in any way whatsoever. The one thing they can't do is give a rebate to parents. So if they want to send their principal on an all-expenses-paid world tour during summer vacation, fly them first class and put them up in 5-star hotels with your tax dollars, that would be legal, okay? Again, imagine something that you would like to do if you had a bunch of money. They can do that with your tax dollars, and it will be legal. Here's the other problem. I don't know how we're going to find out that they're doing crazy stuff with our money, because these private schools are getting public money with no requirement for public meetings, no requirement for public records requests, and no requirement for an annual audit. They don't even have to have an annual audit. How are we? Does anybody have ideas? I mean, I don't know what else to do. Public meetings, public records, and audits are how we find the vast majority of money that's getting misspent. Now, I have asked the people who are advocates for the bill about this issue, because like I said, when I first realized this, I went to one of them and I said, hey, I think you may have missed a step in the functioning here, because we're not going to have any oversight whatsoever of how this money gets spent. And the guy answered me, no, we don't want public oversight of private schools. Well, then don't give them public money. Taxpayers deserve to know what's going on with their money, period. So again, I go back to this. You could think that vouchers are a great idea and still think that this bill is a disaster waiting to happen. Right? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why we would feel that way. They also said this. Well, the parents will figure out if there's money getting misspent, and the parents will, take their kids somewhere else. Okay, I have a couple things to say that. Number one, nothing in this bill allows parents the level of access that they would need in order to find out things are going wrong. If they happen to find something out anyway, let's step back a second here. When do we think it's a good idea for the people who benefit the most from taxpayer dollars being spent to be the same ones that do the oversight of that exact spending? It's a conflict of interest, right? If we were handing out tax credits and we said to the people taking the tax credits, you're going to let us know if anything bad's happening, right? They'd say, oh yeah, definitely. As they're raking in all the money, we'll let you know, no problem. Again, disaster waiting to happen. I think there's another question back there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, once in a while I'll see in the paper where a city clerk or city administrator from Iowa's a small town state where there's either been embezzlement or misappropriation of funds to people on the city council or other residents in the city. My question is, I know Iowa State used to offer every year a City Clerks Institute, and I don't know if that is still functioning, but how do city clerks and city administrators get trained? Is there a certificate program, and what is the protocol for, does the city council ask your office to do an audit? How does that all work?
Good question. So I'll answer the last part first. We audit every state agency by law every year, and we audit cities, counties, and school districts as a market participant. So if they're looking for an auditor, we can put in a bid. If they open up their bids and they want to choose us, they can, but we don't have to bid and they don't have to hire us. For re-audits, if they think that money has been misspent, they can send something into us and let us know, and we can either proceed with an investigation or not. There is training for city clerks. We offer some training for city clerks. The Iowa League of Cities offers some. I think there still is a program at Iowa State that offers some as well. But a lot of this, folks, it comes down to you got one applicant for the job in really rural areas and small towns, and you got to have somebody doing it, and so that ends up being who you hire for it. And I'll tell you too. I mean, this goes back to this. This is the absolute bedrock of everything, of almost every answer I've talked about up here, is accountability, right? Deterring people from poor conduct because they know there's going to be accountability, right? I got 2 kids in my house. We have accountability, okay? We know we have to. We want to teach our kids that there's accountability in the real world. Let me tell you a story about Jessica. When I was at the AG's office, a woman named Jessica ran the accounts for the Mahaska County Soil and Water Conservation District. She also had the exact same job for the Poweshiek County Soil and Water Conservation District. She understood that there was accountability in Poweshiek because one guy on that board at every meeting would say, well, let me see the bank accounts. Nobody ever did that in Mahaska. Jessica embezzled $220,000 from the Soil and Water Conservation District in Mahaska County. Not a penny in Poweshiek. Same person, same circumstances. The only difference was that she knew somebody could look at it and was looking at it in Poweshiek. That was it. And so again, I go back to, we shouldn't have whether you think vouchers are a good idea, we shouldn't have a statute that doesn't have oversight. We should have a statute that makes people go to prison if they steal from taxpayers. We shouldn't have a statute that makes certain documents off limits for the auditor's office, right? And for city clerks, we want to have that training. That training is important, but at the end of the day, we got to have somebody who's sitting on city council who says, hey, let me see those bank records. Yes, sir.
No, not so much a question, but comment. I want to thank you for standing up and putting an end, I guess, to the athletic lawsuits going through to the taxpayers.
Oh, yeah. How could I miss punching the University of Iowa as I stand here in Ames? Thank you for bringing that up. The point that thank you for that. The point that he's making, and I'll make it into a bit of a bigger point. You can hate me if you want. I did go to Iowa for law school. 4 suit settlements under Gary Barta as athletic department director. 4 discrimination lawsuits. At what point do you say, hey, Gary, thanks for your service. We've done a good job on this and this and this, but you've also cost us $11 million in discrimination lawsuits. It's time that we find someone who's going to take care of those things, right? And so a settlement came to the State Appeal Board. The State Appeal Board you may not have heard of. It's me, your state treasurer, and the governor's director of the Department of Management. And we have oversight for settlements for the state of Iowa. Somebody ought to, because it's a lot of money that gets paid out on a regular basis. And I looked at this thing, and they wanted, for the 4th suit, while Gary Barta's been there, they wanted $2 million of your money from the general fund to go along with $2 million from the athletic department. And Gary Barta was going to keep his job. I just said, I'm not voting for this unless Barta's gone. I got nothing against Gary Barta. He was the first one who knew I was going to say this because I called him personally. I called his office and gave them my number and had him give me a call back, and I told him that this is where I stood on it. I don't have any problem with him. But this is our system of self-governance. This is our sense of accountability for how people who are supposed to be serving us do their jobs. And we have to have a sense of accountability in doing that. And if you can have 4 settlements for the same thing, totaling $11 million, and still have your job, then there is no accountability. I want to give credit to Barbara Wilson. She's the new president over there. So I lost that vote, 2-1. Barbara Wilson had the athletic department send $2 million back to the general fund. And so even though I lost the vote, the stink that was created because of my vote, because of me not just rubber stamping, it was big enough that it got her attention, and she decided to do the right thing on that. That I have voted against 5 settlements in my time here. I'm quite sure that's a record. 3 were sexual harassment settlements where we weren't going after the person who committed the harassment to make them repay taxpayers. Why would we not do that? The other one was $175, which may not sound to a lot of money by people who are in government spending much bigger figures than that. But it's the principle of the thing on this open records suit. There's actually a statute in the state of Iowa that requires people on the inside of government, people in positions of trust and power, if they unreasonably fail to respond to a public records request, it's not like they tried to respond and left something out, or tried to respond and thought something fell into an exception, but it didn't, but really unreasonably, that they're supposed to pay for it. Because otherwise, how do we know we're actually going to get the records we're asking for? The Reynolds administration ignored records requests for more than a year. And finally, the people who made them filed a suit, and the settlement that got put in front of us after the Iowa Supreme Court agreed that the suit should proceed was that we were going to use your money to pay for it instead of making the people whose decision it was to pay for it. Was that Governor Reynolds? I don't know. But that's what a trial's for. You go in and you ask the guy that received the public records request, okay, did you receive this? Yes. Okay. Who'd you talk to before you decided to not respond to it? We'd go find out. I have no idea who it would be. I don't care, but it shouldn't be everyone in this room, right? 2 things that were said, and are we close to time here? Okay. Was there anyone else that had a question? I'll end on this then. And this, 2 things that were said for why it was okay to use your money to pay this most recent settlement, the public records one. First was, well, the requests were made during the pandemic. Did any of you not file your taxes and then when the Department of Revenue came knocking, point out, well, it's a pandemic? No, you did not. If you did, good luck. And you didn't have $1.25 billion from the federal government through the CARES Act to help you do things that you needed to do during the pandemic either. So that's not very good. Here's the scary one, and it goes back to my first point about partisanship. The other thing that was said by the governor's director of the Department of Management as to why this was okay to vote for, to support, was, well, one of the people making these requests was just a liberal blogger. Think about that for a moment. I challenge anybody in this room to name for me a time in human history where a government decided to ignore the legal rights of someone because of their political affiliation that ended well. Can anybody do that? Now think about this. We're at a place here in Iowa, where someone can be the director of a department and feel comfortable saying something like that out loud. If that isn't alarming, if that isn't eye-opening to you, it should be. You know who makes most of the, maybe not most, but actually not most. You know who makes a lot of the public records requests to the state auditor's office? Republican operatives. I know why they're making them. Because they want to find something that they can take out of context and use to make me look bad. Do you know what we do with their public records requests? We fulfill them. Because they have the right to do that. And that's the law. And to say that someone, even if you think they're doing it for nefarious reasons, doesn't have a political right to do something should illustrate to everybody how toxic our political culture is right now. That you can say a thing like that, and I'm betting that's the first time you've heard of this. It should be a scandal to have somebody say something like that out loud. If we can't figure out a way to work with each other, to set aside partisanship, and to make sure that we're actually focused on solving problems instead of just beating up on the other team, then we have squandered the gift that we've been given in this country and in this state. I think that Iowa's better than that. You know, from the time I was born through 2014, we sent Chuck Grassley and Tom Harkin to the U.S. Senate together. Were they the same? Nope, they were very different. That was kind of the point, I thought. We were the first state to create a nonpartisan redistricting commission to make sure that gerrymandering didn't happen in Iowa. Because our political culture is that we don't like that kind of stuff. The fact that that could happen in a state like Iowa and that not be front page news to me is pretty alarming. I'll end there. I'll be around if anybody's got any other questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. And before you go, we would love to get your autograph on the back of this book right here. On behalf of Raising Readers, that will be given to a child at their 2-year well child check. So thank you. We'll get that. And go ahead, grab a pen there. Please join us next week online as we'll kick off our first in a 2-part series discussing youth mental health. So very much looking forward to that. Yeah. It's on the back there. There you go. Yep. And with that, it's my pleasure to join with you, Rob, as a fellow Rotarian, and a really wonderful presentation today. You could tell that you take these values that are up on the board very seriously and put them in play not only in your personal life, but what you're doing for the state of Iowa. So if everybody would stand and join us as we recite the 4-way test together of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.